Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
This week, come out to the ballpark as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars at Staten Island University Hospital Community Park for a homestand on June 10th. For a 5-game series as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
This is what everyone's talking about.
Everything's on the table.
This is what champions come to take. This is what everyone came to see.
And the slam!
No do-overs. No second chances. No more Mr. Nice Guy. This is winner take all. The NBA Finals continue on ABC and the ESPN app.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Welcome once again to your weekend as we move deeper into time and space here on the Dr. Sky Experience. On a personal note, go Knicks. And I'm sure and confident, number 24, Bill Bradley, looking down from the heavens as the Knicks, of course, move through the NBA Finals. Let's see, Monday. Well, let's see exactly what happens as they move on to victory. Go Knicks. From the powerhouse Blowtorch Signal, Talk Radio 77 WABC, naturally broadcasting from the center of the universe, New York City, to the nation and the world, welcome to the Dr. Sky Experience. A show that talks about the great mysteries from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. We like to call it a sort of theater of the mind, where you're welcome with your contribution as we look forward to hearing from you on the great subjects and great guests that we bring to this particular audience. How about it? Many agree. We all learn something as we continue to move through time and space, maybe something that you didn't know during your busy daytime schedule. We like it in critical thinking with dialogue. And equally important, what could be more important than that, is you, the listeners. Our contact number, use it often, 1-800-848-9222, or 1-800-848-WABC, of course. And while you're at it, why not download the WABC app so you're further into our house, and you can stay there as moving through the various rooms in cyberspace that we bring to you here on this amazing radio station, a powerhouse that's beaming out into the universe. Tonight's adventure, ladies and gentlemen, is a continuance with the story, things you may not have heard about this whole story of disclosure, the UFO situation, UAPs, and so much more, with maybe a little different twist. But first, a thanks to our helmsman, as we continue with Bill and all those associates behind the curtain, as we say, that navigate this great signal so it can be heard as loud and proud as you would expect. Great news in the realms of aviation, great news in space, great news all over the place, like last night with the weather situation about the return of a potential super powerful El Nino. But in tonight's adventure, we'll talk more about the UAP and UFO situation with Disclosure. New movie coming out, of course, you've probably heard. Steven Spielberg, a very interesting movie coming out the date of the 12th. Disclosure, that's what we want. And we pose this question to the audience before we bring on our special guest. What, if any, other UAP UFO case other than Roswell really intrigues you? And a gentleman who can answer those questions, I'm sure, is our very special guest and friend, Darcy Weir, a director, a producer, and a writer on the many facets and mysteries of the UFO UAP world, the phenomenon that is, and much more. You can check out Darcy by going to YouTube. Check out YouTube Movies for Secret Space UFOs. And a little bit more about our special guest. Darcy Weir is on a mission to bring the world's most captivating mysteries, UFOs, cryptids, Bitcoin, and beyond into the spotlight. Over the past 2 decades, he has crafted over 15 feature-length documentaries, each accessible on Amazon Prime and Apple, making these enigmatic topics more accessible and shedding new light on them for the general public. And with that, a hearty welcome to Darcy Weir. Thank you for being with us on the Dr. Sky Experience. Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you, and thanks for staying up with us.
Yeah, Dr. Sky, I'm happy to be here. Steve, Always a pleasure. Looking forward to having a in-depth conversation with you.
Absolutely, and all the people out there, because, a lot of people criticize the concept lately. They're saying, oh, more stuff about UFOs. I've had it up to here with this information. Nobody's telling me the truth. But then again, on the positive side, I listened to so many people, and I said, listen, that are saying, there really is something to all this. And this is something interesting I'd like you to talk a little bit about. You've just returned from one of the most amazing events in the desert, Contact in the Desert. And what it is, I'd like to describe it and have you give us a little tour, because we weren't able to be there in the beautiful deserts of Southern California. So since 2013, as you know, Contact in the Desert has been the world's leading event for those interested and intrigued by UFOs, UAPs, and extraterrestrial life. The mission there is to provide a platform for open discussions, cutting-edge research, and first-hand experiences in the field of unexplained phenomena. Each year, thousands gather to connect with experts, share stories, and dive deep into the mysteries of the universe. Their website, if people would like to check it, contactinthedesert.com. Darcy, you were there. Talk about this. I mean, this is probably one of the most prolific years because of all the excitement. I don't think there's been a time, maybe other than the early 70s or so, when the UFO story then, no UAPs, was at the forefront. Tell us your experience there. It must have been exciting.
Yeah, it was a wild environment. For sure. I've been to a number of Contact in the Desert conferences in the past. It's really kind of like the way they set it up. They have multiple stages, and you have to sort of choose which stage you want to go to at a given time. Kind of like a music festival, right?
Nice, yeah.
And they have so many different speakers. I mean, they had Jacques Vallée back. They had Dr. Eric Davis, who, won my note. He worked on these special access programs, apparently with UAP materials and such. And then you had Tim Gallaudet, former two-star admiral with the Navy, Jeffrey Nusatelli, who's a new Air Force security personnel whistleblower who was at the Vandenberg Air Force Base when multiple UAP incursions were happening over their airspace. He came forward in Dan Farah's new documentary, Age of Disclosure, and just a whole host of other really interesting speakers. And everybody was talking about the same sort of stuff. We were all talking about the Department of War, UAP release information. Recently, they had two tranche of documents and pictures and videos released. So it was hot news, and this year could be the year of disclosure, literally, from the president and his administration.
I'm hoping that is the case, as many people out there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something that really, we talk about things like national security, maybe reasons why we're never to be told the truth on this. But Darcy, this has been going on at least, in the United States, worldwide, who knows, maybe back to the Egyptians and even before with ancient civilizations. But the 80 or so years that this whole story has been withheld from people, I'm fascinated, and I threw that question out to the audience at 1-800-848-9222. What, if any, other UAP, UFO case other than Roswell really intrigues you, ladies and gentlemen? But let me ask that question of you, because you do this so much and so well, and I mean this sincerely, people. If you check out Darcy Weir's contributions in the world of documentaries, I think you will be pleasantly surprised, and why wouldn't I be? But of all these particular stories, give us what you think would be, if you were standing in front of an audience, and you are here on this particular platform, A Theater of the Mind, what would be one of the most intriguing ones to you, other than, let's say, Roswell? I want to hear what you think.
Well, I think there are multiple events that have happened in worldwide history that seem to point to some kind of higher technology than the public is allowed to know about. I'll bring up Westall 66, which happened in a suburb of Melbourne, Australia, called Westall in the year 1966. Broad daylight sighting, hundreds of witnesses, students and teachers, so adults and a very healthy student body, saw a craft touch down on the ground, land behind two schools, a primary school and a secondary school. And the Australian Air Force was involved with that. There was a cover-up. It's still talked about today, but we don't have any clearer answers, but they seem to be flying saucers, right?
Yeah.
You do have the Tehran incident in 1976 over the city of Tehran in Iran. Nighttime, 2 UFOs observed. They scrambled jets to try and shoot this down over that busy city airspace, and the jets got completely scrambled. They couldn't even eject, and they got their instrumentation only when they were a mile away from the larger object. The city had a complete blackout, when this incursion and interception was going on. Really strange stuff, and the American Air Force was over there being debriefed the same week, saying that wasn't ours. Yeah, I mean, so many incredible cases like this that have happened throughout history, mass witness sightings, and, Phoenix Lights, 1996.
Yeah, that's where I am. I missed it. It's a shame. I mean, not to steal your thunder on this, but March 13th, 1997, I get my phone's ringing off the hook. And I've told the story again, Mr. Humble, on this side of the microphone, too. Everybody's calling me going, did you see it? And I said, see what? I was watching a rerun of Seinfeld, and I'm honest. And I have to laugh because the phone kept ringing and everybody wanted to know what the heck it was. Why? Because obviously doing certain things in the media here in Phoenix for years and around the country, people were curious. And one of my friends who was a 727 pilot with thousands of hours as a commercial airline pilot, he calls me from Scottsdale and says, you're not going to believe this. I said, try me. He said the thing was about 5,000 feet long and slowly moving with no engine sound. And I'm like, there's a credible guy, Darcy. I mean, what the heck could that have been? Still, one of the most amazing unsolved incidents in this whole UAP, UFO kind of story. That's incredible.
Yeah. And the same year, in 1996, in Brazil, you had the Varginha incident, where a whole city that's, nearly 1 million people today, but hundreds of thousands back then, saw UFOs over the airspace. And eventually they allegedly had a craft crash in the countryside and beings escape, which, were later apprehended. One of these soldiers, that Brazilian military that apprehended one, touched it with his bare skin and died due to...
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, what the doctors said in the coroner report was that his immune system completely failed within days of touching this thing, and it looked as alien as you can get. Large red eyes, 3 sort of Finnish type bumps in its large head. It had a larger cranium, no hair, kind of a greenish, dark green skin, and they were spindly and thin. Not wearing any clothes either, and seemed to be like exuding sort of like a frog-like slime from their skin, which might have been what caused this soldier to become sick. So that was all pretty well documented by James Fox's Moment of Contact documentary.
Interesting.
And there's so many cases that just seem to be mind-boggling like that, not including, the Roswell incident, which Stanton Friedman sort of repopularized in the late 70s, early 80s, kind of brought that story back into the limelight. And, Philip J. Corso wrote The Day After Roswell, and it's had a huge telling of multiple different witnesses, nurses that were on the Air Force Base, all kinds of personnel, people that helped clean up the wreckage, farm workers, city sheriff, so many people that can attest after the fact that something happened there.
But Darcy, this is so interesting, and I'm on your side of this equation here. I want to be a believer. I am in extraterrestrial life, not just from the astronomical side, which we won't go into right now. Obviously, with the plethora of stars that are out there, if they're like the sun with exoplanets, why and if not, why not having planetary systems with some sort of life? But what's interesting, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining the Dr. Sky Experience, we thank you for joining us as part of your weekend, and we really appreciate you. Darcy Weir, he's a director, a producer, a writer on many facets of the mysteries of the UFO, UAP phenomenon, and so much more. If you'd like to check him out, go to YouTube Movies, and you can find a plethora of documentaries under the Secret Space UFOs category, and we'll get into a conversation of that. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the reason we're here. 1-800-848-9222, and I pose a question all the time. This one, what if any other UAP UFO cases, other than, let's say, Roswell, really intrigues you? And by our special guest, we're all getting intrigued. Here's one that really bothers me in the sense of this was so obvious, according to witnesses. Let's go to July 13th, 1952. Washington, D.C., a UFO incident where UFO objects are seen flying over the capital of the nation, of course, Washington, D.C. A New York Times headline quote, flying objects near Washington spotted by both pilots and radar. Air Force reveals reports of something, perhaps saucers, traveling slowly but jumping up and down. That's bizarre, and all this stuff has been held under wraps for so long. What do you know about that one? That to me is so intriguing. I've seen pictures over the Capitol.
Well, I've seen some pictures, but then I know that there's a fake animated video that is a recreation of what people had seen that night. It seems interesting, right? This is post-World War II, so there was no reason for an adversary to be, flying over the Capitol buildings like that. It was at a pretty, extreme time of peace. I don't think the Russians had anything like that. It seems like an incursion of airspace from a higher intelligence or somebody much higher, like way more capable, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think it's another one of these anecdotal cases where it's a head scratcher. You could go to the Battle of L.A. that happened many years earlier. I think that was 1942.
Yeah, that's a strange one, too. Right, it got the military excited about what? Describe it to us. Something seen, obviously, over the skies of Los Angeles, and it was documented, but then you never hear much about it anymore.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact specifics, but I know that there was an object seen flying in the air. They thought it was possibly an enemy craft, and artillery and shells were launched into the sky at an alarming rate, so many so that some of the ammunition fell onto civilians and killed them, and the actual craft was never shot down. There was never a balloon that they saw pop or anything from all this ammunition. They unloaded like hundreds. I think the number was over 1,000 rounds into the sky to try and take down this object. And there is a famous photo of two spotlights kind of trying to triangulate the thing in the middle of the sky that they're shooting at. but that's the most famous part of that whole story.
Well, we're going back, Darcy, into our time machine. You're right, February 24th, 1942, and I'm reading this here in front of for the audience so they don't think I just had a genius stroke of good luck here. And the story continues about some strange objects seen over the Los Angeles area. Initially, the target of the aerial barrage was thought to be an attacking force from Japan. But Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, speaking at a press conference shortly afterward, called the incident, quote, a false alarm. When documenting the incident in 1983, the U.S. Office of Air Force History attributed the event to a case of war nerves. That's their quote. Likely triggered by a lost weather balloon. Darcy, we've heard about weather balloons in so many stories. That's amazing, right? Totally incredible.
Yeah. So there's people in the UFO community that, kind of, they surmise that, weather balloon, it sounds like Roswell could have been another case where they were trying to take out a UFO. I don't know, but it's just one of these things. And we know that the Air Force is interested in shooting things out of the sky, especially Roswell, if it for sure happened in 1947, like people say.
Correct.
Sounds like they shot it out of the sky, right?
Amazing.
And met multiple others. If you listen to somebody like David Grush or Lou Elizondo, these guys speak to the fact that there is a crashed craft retrieval program. So that means bag it and tag it. If these things have been in our skies, in our oceans, operating, the militaries of the world have been trying to down them and them to reverse engineer them, because that's valuable technology. Everybody wants the sharpest and biggest stick on the planet.
Right. The biggest questions of this century and the past century are around this whole subject here. I mean, other than delving into the Kennedy assassination or other, quote, conspiracies, we're talking with Darcy Weir, ladies and gentlemen, as we move to the bottom. The hard break in just a moment as we continue to move through time and space. But you, ladies and gentlemen, most important, we see your calls coming in, like Stella in Queens, Frank in Maine, and many others, I'm sure, that will join us. And how to do and be part of the Theater of the Mind. It's simple. You dial 1-800-848-9222. And again, download that WABC app, because it makes the convenience on your side, and it makes it convenience that you can wander through the many houses inside that app to stay in touch with this great radio station. And how about all the other great hosts 24/7 that are bringing you stories not only about truth, justice, and the American way, but the mysteries that go on as we talk with the Dr. Sky Experience with great guests, as you tell us. My email, simply drsky@wabcradio.com, as we continue, as we move through time and space here in June 2026 with the unanswered questions. And the question is posed: when, if ever, will we be told about the story about UAPs? The term is called disclosure. And we will be right back with your questions and comments, and with our special guest, Darcy Weir.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, I'm Seth Shostak, senior astronomer at the SETI Institute, and my job is to look for ET by trying to eavesdrop on signals the aliens may be sending our way. And Dr. Sky is sending signals your way on the Dr. Sky Show.
I don't laugh at people anymore when they say they've seen UFOs. I've seen one myself. A quote from former President Jimmy Carter a long time ago. 32 minutes after the hour, our special guest, if you're just joining us, all guests are special, Darcy Weir, director, producer, and writer on the many facets and mysteries of the UFO and UAP phenomenon, and so much more. Darcy, thank you. Let's continue with the callers. She's been patient. Stella on line number 1. Good morning. You're on with Darcy Weir. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Fine, thank you. It's not morning for me, but I have a question. Recently, I have the radio on all the time, so I might get parts of things, and I don't know how correct they are. But recently I heard about an 1,800-foot tunnel to Mexico. And the reason I'm calling you is because the minute I heard that, I thought about that woman's mother that was disappeared.
Yes.
Because this tunnel was going to Mexico, and I was wondering if anybody else heard the parts I heard.
I did, Stella. I have heard that here, and again, the strange story of our friend out there in Tucson, and I know through many people there that she was a friend of the people I know. They have never found her at this point, and it's a very sad thing. But Darcy, I don't know, any commentary on strange tunnels or anything that you might have? A little off subject for this, but hey, Stella, you have a good point.
Yeah, so Stella, you've got me stumped there. It's not on my radar, the news of a 1,800-foot tunnel between Mexico, but I don't know, cartel activity, I'm not.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when you talk about this, it also has a connection still to the whole UFO experience. I mean, look at the concept of Darcy, New Mexico, and not to jump and change total subjects, but that's supposed to be a strange situation where there was tunnels under the ground. Who knows who made them? That there was actually an alien intelligence there that met the military. Well, what do you know about that one to help us out on tunnels?
I don't know enough about that either. I disingenuous to say I did, but
well, Stella, God bless Nancy Guthrie. Obviously, we've not found her, and it's a very sad situation. But I did read something about tunnels, but nobody can. Well, we can't really prove anything at this point. Did you have another comment that you wanted to share with us? We'd be happy to listen.
Myself, no. It's just that I wanted to know if anybody else might have heard it clearer, because I leave the radio on and I walk back and forth, so I don't always know if I get the whole story. That was the only reason I called.
Sure. Well, thank you, Stella. And again, to conclude what you're asking about, closer to the border, there's been many tunnels, that is, where allegedly drug trafficking and things are still going on between Mexico and the United States. So that is another story. But I hope you have a good morning, and thank you for being part of our show. Everybody's important. Line number 2, we go to Frank in Maine, a regular caller to our show. Frank, good morning to you.
Oh, good morning, Dr. Sky, and I'm humbled to talk to you 2 nights in a row. And your guest is very, very entertaining and extremely bright. And my question is that I want to talk about the Lonnie Zamora case and the Fort Monmouth UFO that was picked up on radar. Lonnie Zamora, who's seen the UFO on the ground, a very reputable police officer, and the Fort Monmouth incident where they picked this low-flying whatever on radar, and they tracked it for several weeks, not days, but weeks. Will the government ever go back and reinvestigate these things and clear Lonnie Zamora of, actually telling the truth, and go back and look at the Fort Monmouth case and think that maybe that was not anything of a military stature from another country or our own stature? Maybe it was UFO. That's my question.
Well, stay with us, Frank. I mean, Darcy, I'm sure you have a lot more knowledge about this subject of April 24th, 1964. Please continue. This is fascinating about what happened allegedly with this individual in New Mexico.
Yeah, Lonnie Zamora was witness of an anomalous craft and its occupants in 1960. Police officer. And this event was compelling because the Air Force's Project Book he officially classified this case as unknown. Something
that is weird.
Something that the Project Blue Book usually did was classify things as prosaic or, basically something misunderstood. And this case, police officer saw an object that looked like an egg craft touch down on the floor of the desert. It put down 3 feet, 2 individuals walking around it. They were short, covered in, sort of metallic-looking jumpsuits. They got back in. It took off at an extremely fast rate after a very sort of fire burst off the ground. And, there was found at the site. There was indents that Lonnie Zamora took photo of. He was a very good investigator. He was a police officer that took his job seriously. So I think this is a case that should. I think the CIA, I think the Air Force, and many other agencies interested in this. Dr. J. Allen Hynek investigated it, and I think whatever files are available on it, they should come out to the public.
Amen. It's called disclosure. But, Darcy, I want to add something to what Frank is talking about. For years, and maybe you had the same privilege, I tried to get Lonnie Zamora on the phone to do an interview like we're doing with you. And it took me about a year, finally, through a person who knew him. And he was very resistant and reluctant, I should say, is a better word, to come on the air. But his health was not that good, as his wife told me at the time. But his story is so incredible right there in Socorro when you see these little beings come out of a little, like you said, an egg-shaped craft. Frank, in Maine, isn't that bizarre? I mean, I got to talk to the man, but in other words, all he kept saying to me was, it's real, and people don't believe me, and it's real, and he passed on. Frank, that's amazing. Isn't that what Darcy's telling us too about this?
Absolutely, and I concur with the stress that was going on with that man, because he was like I said, a reputable police officer, and suddenly he was being ridiculed over something he's seen that probably damaged his health. And that's why I think they should reopen this investigation, not because they claimed it unidentified, but now the disclosure is coming, and I think it will come very, very soon. I mean, full disclosure that he should be renamed as somebody who is important in this genre.
I agree wholeheartedly, Frank. As always, you bring up good points.
Agree.
Totally amazing. Darcy, have you done any kind of investigative documentary on that particular story? I'm just curious for the audience. Maybe they can see more.
I haven't. I've just done research on the case out of, interest. I remember that I heard somebody say the etchings in the side of the egg-shaped craft, there was like a triangular shape, a line, and then two half circles that underneath that. And I remember a researcher said that was actually a code for CIA.
No kidding. No, I think I heard you say that before, but what are you saying, if I didn't hear it clearly, maybe the audience didn't, that the markings were what, reminiscent, or they looked just like the C and the I and the A and what we look at as our letters?
Yeah, and the researcher is Michael Schratt. I think he's way off because I think I don't understand why he would have hired the CIA would have hired two midgets to fly an egg-shaped craft, but it looked like sort of a non-human intelligence encounter, and one of these people that wants to explain all non-human intelligent encounters as just a situation from a letter agency or some kind of human interest. So, well, let's set the stage, Darcy, for this, because this is interesting. Just to set the stage geographically, if the listeners do not know, Socorro is obviously not a gigantic city, an important city. They have a school, I think, a mining college there. And many times when I lived in Albuquerque, I would drive from there down to Las Cruces, where my parents were. But the reason I'm mentioning that, other things that are around there, think about this, ladies and gentlemen. This is interesting if you've never been there. It's not too far away, right, Darcy, from the Trinity site, July 16th, 1945, the first nuclear test in the desert. And if you continue on the 60, which also comes through Arizona, that road, very interesting road, a big history, just to the west by about maybe 25 miles is the giant VLA, the giant radio telescope that sits out there. So the point I'm trying to make here, trying to do like a navigation here with GPS in the mind and virtual here, is that all this is very close to areas that are really what? Perplexing, because the first nuclear blast, the Roswell down in that area, very open area. So who knows what happened, as Frank and Maine was describing. Totally amazing. You got Los Alamos out there. You've got all kinds of Air Force bases, and I think, there could be interest from others beyond. Who knows?
Totally right, my friend. We're here, ladies and gentlemen, having a little bit of fun here, as we always do. But even more important than fun, well, I don't think there is much anything more important than fun. Each of us, I'm sure, we learn something every time we listen to this particular show. That is our goal and intention as we continue with Darcy Weir. Almost up against the next break, 1-800-848-9222. We see your calls coming in, like line 3, Robert in New Jersey, line 4, Barbara in New Jersey, and on line 1, Alice in Ohio. And we encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to give us your stories, pro or con, on this very subject, because we're all waiting, at least those that are interested in this subject or have an open mind. We certainly want to get to disclosure. Right, Darcy? After all this time, I think it's, an obvious situation. We need to hear what's really going on. And in a little while, we're going to hear a comment from another gentleman that was one of my mentors in this whole UFO subject, and I know you knew him. Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist. I called him the father of Roswell. We'll be talking about that in the short excerpt and a clip that I did from an interview that I'd like everybody to hear about him when I asked him the question about disclosure. We'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience, and you, ladies and gentlemen, will be coming on the air with your questions and comments at 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Howdy, this is Jim Mars, author of Alien Agenda, the top-selling nonfiction book on UFOs in the world. And I'm here to say, watch the sky. Dr. Sky, that is, right here on this station.
I'm sure the universe is full of intelligent life. It's just been too intelligent to come here. A quote from an amazing science fiction writer and one who gave us the concept early on about geostationary satellites, none other than Arthur C. Clarke. 48 minutes after the hour, Darcy Weir's our guest, and you, ladies and gentlemen, are here with us. Let's go to line number 3 and say good morning to Robert in New Jersey. You've been patient. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Has someone found a way to weaponize meteors? Recently, one caused a loud noise off the coast of Massachusetts.
I know. Mm-hmm. No, Robert, I don't think anybody's been able to weaponize a meteor. I mean, that would be virtually impossible because these things come from way out there in the cosmos. But I think we have other considerations here, like anti-gravity. The other concept that space may have in the orbital plane is something called rods from God. These are military products that may be in orbit, large tungsten rods that are not nuclear. And when they come through the atmosphere, just like a meteor would, their energies, they're called kinetic energy, they could just do so much damage without radiation. So there you go. Darcy, I don't know. Is anything you want to add to that? That's an interesting comment from Robert with a question.
Well, yeah, I think the rods from God was a concept to drop something, like a big tungsten rod as heavy as a meteor and cause a huge tsunami to attack an enemy power, that type of thing. I don't think they would have any control over a meteor unless they. Yeah, most of the time a meteor is either small, too fast, or way too big to be steered at the planet. I think most of the time we want to steer away. So.
Yeah, Robert, we want to protect ourselves from those. But did you have another part of that we didn't answer, or something else that you might want to add? Please go ahead.
Well, I'll leave it to you. You're the expert.
Well, I think that Darcy and I are both trying, but you know what? Like we said last night, and many other guests have said, and even Darcy has admitted it, and I always will, if I don't know, I'll be honest enough to say I don't. And there you go. Thank you, Robert in New Jersey. Line number 4, Barbara joins the Dr. Sky Experience. She's in New Jersey. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Sky. Good morning, Darcy Weir. Something really funny happened today. I thought I saw 2 tall whites walking on the path alongside my house.
Okay.
And I say that because we have a lot of walkers. Our street's very nice for walking. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of different characters and people with strollers and people with kids and, kids on bikes. And then I saw these two girls walking next to each other along the path. They were very tall. I would say they were about 6 feet tall. And for girls, That's very tall.
That is tall.
Yeah. And they had white skin, like really white. And they had black gym outfits on, very skin tight. And
are you sure they're not trying to help the Knicks? I mean, the Knicks maybe don't need all the help, but you never know. Backup teams.
Yeah, my mother would advise against an outfit like that.
No, but seriously, you're seeing these people that look, and obviously you're looking at this, and it's an oddity to you because you don't see these kind of people that tall. But, Darcy, this is interesting what Barbara's talking about. One of the alleged alien type, creatures is what? The tall Nordic blondes? Is that something that you could elaborate on? Maybe Barbara's onto something here. Who knows?
It's something that many people have said that they've seen. And, for example, Travis Walton said he saw that the second time around. Mm-hmm. When he was on this craft and ran into another set of entities. Who else? Jim Sparks has seen them. Betty and Barney Hill did not see Calvin Parker. I did a documentary called Pascagoula 73.
Oh, yeah.
Calvin Parker talked about how he saw a tall blonde lady in his later encounters. And in his first encounter, she was also taking his blood and all kinds of other stuff. I don't know where this phenotype really comes from, but my mind tends to think that if we're looking at a tall blonde human, it's probably a tall blonde human. And
I think so. Yeah, probably. Right, from my estimation. But Alice, it caught your eye, right, Alice? I mean, to you, that's a different type of person description that you gave us, like 6 foot tall. There are 6 foot tall females, but again, you're talking about them looking incredibly white-skinned and what, pale? Is that how you would describe it?
Paper white.
Yeah, interesting.
White, so white that it would reflect the sun.
Strange.
And they had very dark eyes, and the bodies were just not nondescript. Their running shorts were so tight. The pelvis area was as wide as the two legs. That's how skinny there was not an ounce of fat on them at all. And it's not athletic. It's not, they're athletic and thin. I think they were aliens. And another reason why I'm calling is because if anybody calls, if anybody else reports, I'd like to be on the list.
Okay. Well, I hope they're not looking to cause any. Right. I'm not hoping they're not looking to cause any harm to you. And I don't think we don't know, but let's hope not. But Barbara, this is very interesting that you're talking about it. It's, again, I think Darcy, I'll let him go first, and myself. Darcy, what do we say when we don't know? We don't know. So
yeah.
Thank you for the report. You're at the right show with these type of things, and stay in touch with us, Barbara, on that. If you have that particular situation again, chime in with us again when we continue to talk about this subject. I thank you for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. Hope you have a good weekend and a very peaceful one. Let's try and see if we can move forward here. Line number 1, Alice in Ohio. You've been patient, and I do appreciate you. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. With the encounters, have there been any efforts in communication? You can't have a relationship without communication. Mm-hmm. what type of communication? What if any, what were the exchanges? What did you learn? What was the method of communication?
Interesting. In many cases, I won't steal Darcy's thunder, it's been pretty much a thought. It hasn't been verbal. Am I correct in that, Darcy, with the alien intelligence? It's been pretty much something where they, come through your head, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I think what the most commonly reported contactee communication, whether that's just an experiencer, close encounter of a third kind, or straight up abductee, many people call sort of information just being beamed right into their head, like instantaneous thought, imagery, ideas. And I would say for Calvin Parker, again, and this story I did with him, he talked about how he had visions of a major war happening, world war, starvation, disease, famine. You got people like Amaury Rivera, who said he was on board a craft in Puerto Rico in the 90s. He said that this human-looking extraterrestrial imparted that there was going to be an asteroid that hit the planet, and there would be, some kind of extreme worldwide pollution due to that fact. And, then you've got Betty and Barney Hill talking about similar ideas. I think one of the things that constantly comes up is a warning about the future and some kind of doom, and that we need to circumvent that or treat each other better or treat the planet better, all very interesting ideas.
They are. And Darcy, I apologize. I say that to every host and of course every guest, I should say, and every caller. Alice in Ohio, I don't know if we've completely answered you, but it comes to some kind of transcendental meditation or some kind of a transmission to the brain. This is what most of the experiences that I've read about and people we've talked to. Alice in Ohio, thank you for being part of the show. Hour number 1, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up. Nick in Virginia and Ray in Queens, if you'd be so kind enough to stay with us, we'll continue to take your calls, as everybody else around the nation and the world, at 1-800-848-9222. You got about 30 seconds. Give us your summation for hour 1, if anything you'd like to add about this whole UFO disclosure. Talk about it. Well, I think we'll carry on into hour number 2 with our special guest, Darcy Weir. 1-800-848-9222 gets you into the theater of the mind. And now it's time for everybody to go to the snack bar, if you choose, as we continue with hour number 2 on the other side of the news and announcements. We'll be right back.
Look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Thank you for joining us as we continue to go deeper into your weekend here from the amazing powerhouse blowtorch signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC. I'm confident, as I'm sure our special guest Darcy Weir, that if there are those UAPs headed toward the Earth, they've locked on to the signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC. As we broadcast from the center of the universe, New York City, to the nation and the world, welcome to a show that we call the Theater of the Mind. Great guests, as we may not have heard, and you will continue to hear to all the hours the Dr. Sky Experience is on the air, from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. I'd like to thank our helmsmen, both Bill and Jackson, for maintaining the quality of this particular sound that you hear, strong and powerful as it beams itself out to the universe. Welcome to hour number 2. Darcy Weir, thank you for being with us. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to jump into a conversation with a gentleman that I knew and you also knew, Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist. What an amazing person, wouldn't you say? Tell us a little bit about Stanton and your experiences with him, as we call him, the father of Roswell.
Yeah, he kind of picked up the torch as a Roswell story investigator and found a lot of the witnesses. And yeah, he really spread the modern idea of a extraterrestrial visitation theory, which, for the longest time, for decades, really, that was the biggest sort of theory in the game of ufology. The other competing theories, but the extraterrestrial visitation theory was his baby. And I got to talk to him when I made a couple documentaries a while back now. I made one called Being Taken about abductions. Mm-hmm. He championed the Betty and Barney Hill case and found that to be credible. And I also released a series called Secret Space UFOs, and he's in Secret Space UFOs in the beginning. He just lent such a credible voice to the subject from a scientific perspective.
Well, I wanted to add something to the conversation. We had dinner many times as he came here to Phoenix, and we got together to know him. And what I was impressed about, we call him the father of Roswell. Here's a short little excerpt that we did at a very crowded UFO type of an event in California many years back. But sadly, as you know, Darcy, he passed away May 13th, 2019. This was done probably a few weeks before that, and he passed away, sadly, from a heart attack at the Toronto airport. But the reason I want to play this, it has a little background noise, but you can hear him clearly. I asked him the question about when do you think, if we'll ever get disclosure? And here's what Stanton Friedman told me at that. Welcome to the Dr. Sky Show. I'm with Stanton Friedman, renowned ufologist. He's here to talk to us, ladies and gentlemen. Why is this government or the government's world non-willing to release this information and tell us the truth? I
think the biggest thing is that no government wants its citizens to owe their allegiance to the planet instead of that government. Nationalism's the only game in town.
Interesting.
And we all are still identified with our nationalistic origin, American, Russian, Greek, whatever. So I think it's going to be a while before we get over this and recognize it's a dinky little planet, for God's sake.
Like
there are planets all over the place.
The pale blue dot.
Yeah.
Tiny little speck. Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sky Show. You rock. Thank you for all your work. And may this continue that one day you and I and everybody else will know simply the truth, that we're not alone in this vast universe.
That's a big answer to a tough question. It's an important answer. We are not alone.
Thank you, Stanton Friedman.
Pleasure.
Our memories of Stanton Friedman, Darcy, very interesting man, and so much to talk about, but the callers rule here. Let's go to line number 3 and say good morning to Greg in Michigan. He's been patient. Greg, good morning. Your contribution to the subject.
Oh, my God, Dr. Sky. I got to tell you, I put it on Facebook. I found you. Your voice is mesmerizing. You don't realize. You're very special. Mr. Positive, boom shakalaka. I was going to bring up evolution, but now we're talking about UFOs, and we're talking about alien life form. And here's the thing, Dr. Sky and your distinguished guest. When we look at something, and we look at through the prism of what we've seen by Spielberg and how things are going to look, the green men, the long, lanky bodies with the big heads, will we see and understand exactly something that is so foreign that we can say that it is not of this world? I can't think of anything that you could possibly think of that has not been promulgated by society, media, movies, TV, what have you. And so what I guess I'm asking is, when you look at something and you think it's otherly worldly, how do you know what you're looking at?
That's a very good question, and we're going to turn it right over to Darcy. This is his area of expertise, ladies and gentlemen. Darcy, Greg's bringing up some very interesting philosophic points. Please continue. This is fascinating.
Yeah, I think the eye of the beholder is going to be tainted by their own ideology, their own logic, their own experience. And when they look at something like a UFO, they might say, demon, alien, or angel, or something in between.
Yeah.
It's a very good point that you brought up. It's hard for people to understand what they're looking at.
You're right, because we think aliens, well, we've seen them in B movies, right, Greg? You know, they all look weird and everything with tentacles and, you know, big claws like lobsters. How do we know? I mean, that's an incredible conversation that we're having here. So, Greg, you get the last word. And also on the Boom Shakalaka, let's push that over to the Knicks as they score many, many baskets and win in the NBA Finals. But it originally came from an iteration from Sly and the Family Stone in the song I Want to Take You Higher when it was known as Boom Laka Laka. But whatever, right, Greg? Boom Shakalaka sounds good to me.
I love it. And I mean, you know, you got to understand, I used it with Stephen A. and Chris Cuomo, but I got to ask you one real quick thing, and I want you to think about this. Is evolution directional?
Wow. Darcy, I'm going to turn that over to you, too, because I'm going to tell the audience I do not know.
I am not a evolutionary, biologist or in that field, but I do believe that human beings, animals show signs of adaptive radiation evolution, which means as we travel to different parts of the world, we have changed over time. And, maybe I'm open to the idea that maybe a more primitive ape-like man was modified into Homo sapiens. I think the missing link is a great conversation, but I just don't know. I'll go with Dr. Sky there and say I don't know either.
Well, we're always honest, Greg, and you know what? We're going to bring this up in other iterations of the show because we have other guests that we want to bring on that talk more specifically to those points. But thank you for calling, and appreciate the kind comments about this show and, of course, the great guests that we have. So I hope you have a good weekend. Thanks for being part of the show. Let's go to line number 5. He's been patient. Nick in Virginia, if you're with us, you're on the air with Darcy Weir.
Good morning, Dr. Sky and Mr. Weir. Earlier you were talking about a sighting over Washington in 1952.
Correct.
And I had to laugh when you said that because The Day the Earth Stood Still came out in 1951.
One of my favorite movies.
Right. Me too. And it had that, that saucer flying. It was so phony looking. Saucer flying over Washington, D.C. So I had to really laugh whenever you guys talked about that. But
you got it.
I have a couple questions for you, and let me preface it by saying this. I'm agnostic about alien life forms visiting Earth, because, one, the difficulty of space travel, and highlighted to me by man's own inability to explore the moon 60 years after setting foot on it.
Correct.
And it's due to the failure of the Earth to create enough wealth to do so. Apollo 20th was canceled because they needed that booster rocket to put the space station up.
Right,
so
so was Apollo 18 and 19. Obviously, you're right. You count very well because those were Skylab. Imagine people living inside a booster rocket. That's exactly what they did. Those astronauts, that's amazing. But no, continue, please, because I want Darcy to jump in on a response to this.
Well, you have Elon Musk, and you got the Chinese and U.S. now we're trying to race back to the moon and try to set up a foothold on there. And I have some comments about that because also. But the questions I have for you is, what would it be our Earth's interest about making contact with?
Go ahead, Darcy. You brought up a good point. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think there could be multiple implications, right? Multiple competing interests if you believe the idea that maybe the universe is teeming with life and we're yet to have that fully acknowledged in the public. Maybe some of that life wants to exploit us, like we would exploit a third world country. Maybe some of that life wants us to join them, to, become a higher purpose being in the galaxy, and to learn more and become, more knowledgeable. Perhaps there are beings out there that are indifferent to us, and they look at us as, some very low form of life that they can manipulate and mess with because they're higher on the food chain. I don't know.
Sure.
But I'm interested in all these implications. Mm-hmm. And it is possible that those could be different versions of what's at play here. You never know.
No, you say it so well. I want to mention, Nick, in closing, because we got to move forward. That movie that you're talking about, The Day the Earth Stood Still, I'm such a fanatic about that movie. Here's how. I actually found in a bookstore Laserdisc copy, which is this gigantic box. Remember Laserdisc, ladies and gentlemen? Now I'm dating myself. And it's signed by the executive producer, and it has this entire booklet in there. And you know what, Nick? I'm never going to let that go, because that movie so much opened our minds, not about aliens being monsters, but the whole concept about give peace a chance in the universe. And if you haven't seen that particular movie, I hardly give homework, right, Darcy, here? And I know you're not. But I would suggest that people get it, because it also ties into what you were saying, Nick, about July 13th, 1952, a strange series of sightings right over the Capitol. Nick in Virginia, thank you for being with us. Appreciate your time. Let's continue, Darcy. Excitement builds here. Line number 2, Ray in Queens. You've been patient. You're on with Darcy Weir. How you doing?
Good morning, guys. I readily admit I'm a minority of one in that I find the entire subject nonsensical and the discussions of that subject laughable. I could replay any show of Art Bell from 35 or 40 years ago, and it would be the same thing. This happened in 1962. This happened in 1971. Now, of course, when we have everybody could take a picture at any time of anything, and we have all these scientific things out in space, nobody sees anything. You had a caller 3 or 4 back. She said that, these were paper white beings dressed in black. Would never think of picking up the phone and taking a photo, and I just laugh.
Well, Ray, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here before Darcy, and I think the audience will appreciate these comments. I want to be very candid with the audience, too. And maybe what you're saying, Ray, and nothing against Darcy. God bless him. Look at all the research he's doing. But of all the sightings, Ray, that we've had, show me one credible piece of evidence that we can hold in our hand. And if the disclosure thing was really going to go along the right way, I think Darcy would agree. If we have these alleged craft that have been captured and recovered, and alleged bodies, as David Grush says, that the government does have, let's do the 250th anniversary of the United States and set it up where we can have everybody come down to the Washington Monument, right, and take a look at this. But you're right on that point. But the reason we love this subject is because if you look at it astronomically, and I'm not trying to convince you, Ray, you're entitled to your opinion. I respect it. But the thing is, if so much out in the universe replicates what we seem like a solar system, why couldn't there, wouldn't there be something out there? Darcy, Sorry to take the time, but your response to Ray.
Well, Ray, I understand your frustration. There's a lot of people that do think this is laughable, and I think there are cases and stories that emanate from this community that are laughable. I agree with you on some of that. But then there's cases that are real, that seem to show trace evidence, scientific observations that could be made afterwards, lots of credible eyewitness testimony, military pilots. These guys you trust to protect your country, and they're chasing these things in the sky and getting outmaneuvered. Mm-hmm. So sure. I would call those people credible observers, and I don't want to call those people liars. I don't want to call that laughable either. I take that seriously. So to each their own. May you have a pleasant year, and I hope your life stays positive regardless of what happens with this whole disclosure movement. It's not for everybody. That's fine. You can't poo-poo all of it.
No, I know. And let me say how I was disrespected, Ray. If you're hearing and you're still with us here, we're going to move on in a minute. But I want to tell a quick story. I was asked to speak at Roswell, and this is about when I was in my 30s. That was a long time ago. And my topic was something simple: how to become a better sky observer. So what did I do? I had a 2-hour presentation in this giant auditorium, kind of cool, the UFO Museum. And all I was there to do is to say to people, if you do not know the map of the sky, why not learn it? That's a planet, that's a star, here's the named object, so why? Why are we doing this? You know, Darcy. So that we can identify things, so when we do have a report, we don't hear a report like this. Something came out of the sky over here and moved here, and it was bright. Well, that's not really a report of credibility, right? It's just maybe you did see something. Afterwards, at the end of that talk, I had people come up to me, and they were seniors when I was in my 30s. And they were actually poking my chest going, you are not a believer. And I said, what do you mean? I said, I'm only here to help you identify. In other words, if you don't know how to drive between point A and B, the old map way, good luck in trying to find a location. But simply, I think my point is well made. Learn the heavens, learn the map of the sky so you can become, what? A credible reporter, right, Darcy? Of these objects. And even if it's 2% that are so amazing, that's what keeps me going. And Ray, appreciate your commentary. So thank you, both sides of the equation. Let's continue before we drop to the bottom of the hour, hour number 2 at the hard break. We go to line number 1. John on the West Coast in California. You're on with Darcy Weir. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Sky. I would like to ask your guest if he knows anything about chemtrails. I'm a retired truck driver. I drove for about 42 and a half years. And one day I was coming from Vegas, headed south on Interstate 15, and I saw, just before I got to Barstow, I saw this chemtrail. It was as big as a Ferris wheel, and it was like a slinky, a big slinky, and it was big, thick, and solid, and it went all the way to Victorville on the side of the road.
That's
now,
big.
what in the world? Big enough for you could pilot a plane right in the center of it, and this chemtrail was all the way to Victorville. I get to Victorville just before I got to the hill there. It disappeared. It wasn't there anymore. But what in the world made that?
I have no idea, other than allegedly Dan Whittington. He's a gentleman we have on geoengineering, and I'm sure to answer your question better, John, we would have him. In the interest of time, before we go to the hard break, Darcy, I think this is fascinating what people are seeing, like John in California. Truck drivers have their eyes all over the road and maybe even into the sky as they refuel. What the heck do you think he saw? What's a description of what you heard?
I don't know. Without seeing an object in front of the chemtrail or contrail, it's anybody's best guess. Maybe it was a top secret, military spacecraft that had just shot off into the stars. Who knows? But
yeah, and John, in California, here we go
spooky.
Yeah, it is strange, Darcy, but, a lot of military secret equipment and aircraft are tested. The whole basis of Area 51 was not about just the UFO story. It was about Lockheed's amazing aircraft, which I knew many of the pilots, the A-12s, and then the predecessor, the SR-71. So you never know. They're also seeing strange objects, John, in the sky, which could produce these things. The strangest one was seeing the contrails called donuts on a rope. And what's that? They were these pulse wave detonation engines that they thought had something called dark star, something that could go super fast beyond that of like a SR-71. And what you're seeing is credible, but we don't know. So I appreciate you, John, in California, for being part of the Dr. Sky Experience, and hope you'll stay tuned. Dane Whittington is the gentleman that we'll have in the future, so I'm sure you'll want to check back on the details of geoengineering. More with our special guest, Darcy Weir. I'm going to bring up, as we move into the new half hour, the last half hour of the show, a conversation that we have. There was an author and a journalist, Ben Cost of the New York Post, that brought together an interesting article, and we'll talk about it. It's highlighted scientific issues on the UAP contact protocols. In other words, science are issuing UAP contact protocols. In other words, rules of how you need to follow them if indeed you are the one who discovers an alien civilization signal or contact. Much more with our special guest, Darcy Weir, and all of you, like Robert in Philadelphia, Frank in the Bronx, Elena in New Jersey, Tony in Clifton. Thanks for your patience. The Dr. Sky continues on the other side of these announcements.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Annie Jacobson, author of Area 51, an uncensored history of America's top secret military base. My book is about the most famous military installation in the world that doesn't officially exist. And you're listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
The phenomenon of UFO doesn't exist or doesn't say anything about the presence of intelligence in space. It just shows how rare it is here on the Earth. A quote from Unknown, and it's probably better that we said it that way. 32 minutes after the hour, we continue with Darcy Weir. And ladies and gentlemen, an interesting story here I'd like you to see, I'd like you to comment on. Recently, as much as I think today, a columnist, Ben Cost of the New York Post, the headline, Scientists Issue UAP Contact Protocols. And in simple English, it states this: when ET phones don't pick up, contact that is, for searching for ET, it's by the International Academy of Astronautics in Paris. They have 8 principles that they want us to follow. So in other words, they really don't want, like if you and I actually met an extraterrestrial, they want a certain protocol to be followed, obviously to make it credible. But do you know much about this? And I hope I said it right, because this was just given to me not too long ago. What say you?
Well, just tell me a bit more about what was given to you. I mean, I'm a little bit dubious on it.
Well, basically, and it would take me hours to read this, and it's kind of unfair if you haven't seen it, and I understand that. It's by the Internet. I might recommend people go to the New York Post. I think it's today's edition, in which the journalist, Ben Cost, if you just search this, it basically goes through these 8 principles of which people are supposed to follow, or governments. But the bottom line on this, it seems as if they want the UN involved in this, about disclosure rules and all the kind of things to tie people's hands up. And I think that's the gist of it, without me going into too much detail. I haven't read the entire, it's like maybe 25 pages of the International Academy of Astronautics. Why I'm saying this, Darcy, it's kind of interesting because now somebody's got their hands in the pot here, and I don't know if that's good. It's like so much control. In other words, who will make the announcement if UFOs are real? And if you don't follow these protocols, in other words, they're trying to weed out maybe the things that are fake in their interpretation. What say you on that limited information that I've given you, if anything?
I think it's important that we weed out the fake information so that only the truth is what's up for discussion, so we can learn from it and advance from it, right? Mm-hmm. If we have a bunch of bullshit, sorry if I'm not allowed to swear, but if we have a bunch of BS that's in the midst of the conversation, dominating the conversation, especially in ufology, it's just going to mire us, keep us from moving forward. And I appreciate some framework that's being proposed to leave the garbage behind and only pursue the greatest stuff, right?
Yeah.
I like that. And I think if, the United Nations is interested in it, supposedly Jacques Vallée back in the 70s was interfacing with the United Nations on the UFO subject. So multiple countries being interested and engaging with a framework from which we should move forward and address UFO, non-human intelligence, awareness, and truth. I'm all for it.
I hear you. And again, it's unfair to throw you under the bus on this one. Certainly not my intention. But the story goes on here, and in the simplest English that I could say it, no replies should be sent. So in other words, if there is detection of alien life, I'm saying maybe through a radio telescope or some other methodologies, they're saying that unless we follow these principles, no replies should be sent. And I wonder why. I mean, if somebody discovered something and said, hi, here we are, come over here and visit us, somebody more powerful, like, quote, UN, global government, wants to be, involved in this so we don't mess up the communication in their words. That's an interesting story. Obviously, something that we can't figure out right now. Let's continue on line 3. Let's go to Robert in Philadelphia. He's a regular caller, and we wish him a good morning. Thank you. You're on the air.
Hi, Dr. Sky. It's good to talk to you again, and I really appreciate your guest, Dr. Weir. I had one simple question, but one can't help but, you hear the show and things pop into your head. I think that, and I promise I'll be very quick, I think that evolution is directional because it always leads to more complex organisms. The doctor had mentioned something about our separation from the ape family, and I would just encourage listeners to look up human chromosome number 2, the fusion that made the difference between us and the chimpanzees and why people think that it was manipulated. And as far as the agenda, you would think that if they wished us harm, they would have done it a long time ago. And exactly. I'm hopeful in that regard, but I'm also mindful of the fact that 600,000 people disappear every year just from North America alone, which is kind of astonishing to me, not to mention the various actual civilizations that have disappeared in the past. But I'll get right to my question. I was very curious about the element moscovium, the synthetic element, the heavy element that was developed in a joint thing between us and Russia. And it harkens back to something Bob Lazar had said, because he mentioned that element had something to do with propulsion. Now, there is no uses for it now other than to study its quick decay. So I'm wondering why they would synthesize something that wasn't native to Earth. You know what I mean?
You're right, Robert, on the moscovium. It's almost theoretically, in other words, if you see it, it would be like a spark and it would vaporize. So in other words, they haven't had it, sustainability on that was the big issue. And then the whole Robert Lazar story is another subject. But Darcy, this is fascinating. It goes on to this unobtainium thing. Well, what do you know and what Robert's talking about? I'm sure you have better information than I do.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting story, and I think that if something is really powerful, it tends to be more unstable, right?
Correct.
Let's look at hydrogen, for example. Hydrogen stands out as a combustible gas because it's more unstable. It's actually more combustible than your typical gasoline. That's why hydrogen is not widely used as a auto fuel, right? Because you could make a little hydrogen bomb pretty quickly if you screw that up. And element 115, supposedly you can only manufacture, a couple atoms of it together at a time, and then they go up in a spark in an oxygen atmosphere. So people don't understand how this cylinder of it was made to stay stable and be dropped inside of the engine system, let's call it, of the sports model that Bob Lazar was reverse engineering or studying over at Papoose Lake S4 facility.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
But what I'm saying is instability is something we do know about on the periodic table for things that are powerful. It's just whether they're always real, and whether the stories are just mirroring something that we do know of in order to sell their own fantastical nature, let's say.
You bring up a good point, though. That's interesting. So unobtainium, moscovium, Robert, this is interesting. They're not something that you go out and be able to produce where you can see a measurable amount of this. But how about this, gentlemen, in the audience far and wide of Talk Radio 77 WABC? If you could create antimatter, the power of that would literally be off the charts. We have to thank, if you go back and do your own homework on this, Paul Dirac, a physicist of a long time ago, back, let's say, in the 1920s, came up with this whole concept of what antimatter is. But, Robert, fascinating stuff you always bring to the table, so thank you for being part of the show. I hope that your answer is there, even though none of us know how to make moscovium and keep it in any kind of a thing where you can look at it, hold it, or use it as propulsion. Thank you for being here. I got to go on this one. Stanton Friedman, back to him. He had some real criticisms of Robert Lazar. Do you know much about that? I mean, I don't want to dig too deep into it. I'm not trying to malign anybody here, but do you have a general idea of why he thought that?
Stanton claimed that he researched background of Bob Lazar. He checked into MIT, that Bob never attended there. He said that he checked with, Los Alamos. He never worked there, and most certainly never had a record working at a S4 lab or anything like that. And that was supposedly with the Navy that he was employed.
Right, naval
that
intelligence.
Could have been the naval intelligence, exactly. The Office of Naval Intelligence. So, I mean, there is such a term as sheep dipping, where, if a employer that's from an intelligence or military background really doesn't want you to seem credible anymore, they can wipe your records. And I wonder if that's what happened to Bob Lazar by the time that Stan Friedman came about him. I'm not sure.
Well, let me say this to the audience. I had Robert Lazar on as a guest a long, long time ago on the phone. Never met him in person. But he was so enamored by his vehicles that he made, these jet-powered cars, and how cool. He seemed like a very smart guy, of course. But I always thought his story, to me, sounded very credible. I mean, what he talked about was interesting, and so many people believe that there is this hidden place, as you appropriately talk about, Papoose Lake, S4, where all this secret stuff has been going on, and now it's moved somewhere. So that, to me, is just totally bizarre. But again, not Bizarre Lazar, but Robert Lazar. But Stanton was really adamant about that. We'd had dinner, and we'd be talking, and he was going on telling me about, I did this, as you explained very clearly. I did a deep dive into his background. So amazing. Maybe they did wipe, right, Darcy, this guy's background. So maybe he did do this. So the mystery continues. Show us some evidence of these craft that you talked about, levitation, with using this, anti-gravity warp drive or whatever the heck it was. That's an amazing story. But we're going to continue, folks. If we haven't gotten you on the air, we'll do our very best to do that, and so much more with our special guest. Check out Darcy Weir, of course. Go to YouTube, the YouTube movies of YouTube, and check out his secret space UFOs. I think you'll be most impressed by this gentleman. We'll be right back as we count down the remaining portion of hour number 2, and we'll do our best to get you on the air.
Is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Howdy, this is Jim Mars, author of Alien Agenda, the top-selling nonfiction book on UFOs in the world. And I'm here to say, watch the sky. Dr. Sky, that is, right here on this station.
47 minutes after the hour, we go right to it. The caller board is full. We'll do our very best to get as many on the air in the remaining time. Let's go to line number 2 and welcome Tony in Clifton. You're on with Darcy Weir. Good morning to you.
Hi, Dr. Sky. Hi, Darcy. So my question is really very simple. It's, I guess, for both of you guys. And one of the reasons there's so much confusion about UFOs is exactly like you were saying, there is no science to the approach of it. And the other thing, which is very generic to me and basic to me, is that we have not gone to space. We have not set up residence there. So we're just hearing, I think what we're hearing is they visited here. We know astronauts may have seen something when they were flying in space, but basically it's all dropped down here. And the validity to all this will be much more scientific when we could say, I feel that we've gone to space. We have like the Jetsons used to go from place to place. Is that true? Is that a good way of looking at this? Or can we see credible evidence without going to where they are?
Very good question, Tony. Darcy, I think this was made directly for you. It's interesting.
Well, I heard a couple things there. I mean, one of which is that we didn't go to space, but we did go to space. Bit confused by that. Do you just want to clarify that a bit for me?
Sure, sorry. What I mean is that we flew in space. We haven't set up, centers and landings there, and we haven't, done research centers there to see what's going on there.
On the moon or Mars or something?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the International Space Station, which is a research center that floats in cislunar space. And there are known CIA, Air Force programs that have, space stations that are off the books or have been in the past with manned personnel. And then on top of that, you do have autonomous research instrumentation up there, like the X-37B, which can be launched into space, looks like a space shuttle, and is unmanned, but can be in space for over a year at a time.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I do think that there's a possibility we don't know everything that's going on up there. I think that we're just told the very minimum. And I think space is the final frontier. I think this is the greatest theater to orchestrate a war. And the powers that be, the U.S. or Russia or China, they're all vying for supremacy there.
Interesting. Tony, thank you. I wish there was more time to explore this, but you're always right on and with great questions and comments. I wish you a great morning and look forward to listening and speaking with you in the future. Time is of the essence. Line number 4, Frank in the Bronx. You've been patient. Your comment to Darcy Weir.
Hey, Dr. Sky. Hey, Dr. Weir. I just want to make 2 comments, okay, about alien life, how they would look. It's all going to depend on the gravity of the planet. They might have 4 legs, short bodies, It's not going to look like us, You know what I'm saying? Gravity's going to dictate what it looks like.
Right. In other words, the gravity of planets maybe shapes these, quote, aliens, right, beings.
Yeah, if it had more gravity, it'd be crushed.
You're right. Just like us, Frank, if we went to the sun has the gravity. Of course, you couldn't do it. It's so hot. 27 times your body weight, you would be smashed down like a, just like a whatever would be smashed down, just not good. But that's a fascinating story. Maybe the aliens look like. Go ahead.
One more comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think alien life is already here. Like, if you look at the octopus, there's nothing like that in this world, So I think that it came from somewhere else, And it's very smart. They can figure out problems.
Well, thank you, Frank. Your conversation about alien life is here. Who better than Darcy Weir to discuss what he might say about that? Darcy,
thanks, Frank. Yeah,
go ahead.
I think alien life could be here, and I think the government's going through the process to figure out how to disclose that to us. I'm waiting to see what happens in that regard. I think there's enough cases throughout history that prove something has happened. I'm also open to the government having, or the militaries and their third-party contractors having secret tech that they want us to think is alien. That could be a very big reality as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll see where the shoe falls.
Line number 1, Alan in Long Island. You've been patient. How are you this morning? You're on the air.
Gentlemen, great show, and this is the perfect call to finish everything off. Gentlemen, you're both very entertaining, but the truth is, on this planet, we have no space aliens in I call it Studio 51, not in Studio 54, not area. We have no space. We have no space aliens, folks. There are no bodies of space aliens, no space alien craft that we have. Because if we did have it, we would have seen it years ago. It does not exist. It's a cottage industry, meaning a lot of people make money off of this. They give seminars, they give speeches, they write books. And this is something which really is unfortunate, because I will tell you, in America, we have been invaded by the third world, and you guys don't seem to be worried about it. If you really were worried about something going on, you would also bring this up and say, hey, look, this world, the United States of America, has been invaded by the third world. We have a communist mayor in New York, a communist mayor in L.A.
Alan, I hate to cut you short, but let me say this. When we do stories about American exceptionalism, I want you to be the first caller, because that's a good subject. And believe me, my friend, I did 20 years of a show called A Call to Rights about American exceptionalism. Not that I'm the only guy who can do it, but for this format, we'll have to take your word that the alien thing is not real. Darcy, you get the response on this, and we'll try to get one more caller in before the clock runs out. Thank you so much, Alan.
Alan, they're real. They're coming to get you, buddy. You can't stop it.
That's amazing. Let's go to line number 3, Don in Long Beach. You've been patient. Good morning. You're on with Darcy.
Good morning, gentlemen. One thing, just want to comment on Tony's comments earlier. As far as we know, none of our probes that have been out in the solar system or wherever have seen any evidence of life or other civilizations. Not that maybe they're, I don't know, NASA's hiding something from us, but to my knowledge, nothing has ever appeared there. And the other question I have is scale. You would think that intelligent or any beings from another planet, the other planet most likely is not the same scale as Earth. It may be huge. It may be a Jupiter-sized planet.
Correct.
And they would have a problem. I mean, these would be huge creatures based on where they come from, or even smaller. Maybe there were smaller planets. So what we're seeing is basically the same scale as far as spacecraft or alleged beings that are Earth-like. Not to disregard that. I mean, maybe they're from the future. But that should be looked at a little bit, I would think. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Don, for being part of the show. Darcy, I hate to cut you short, but you got about a minute for a response, and the clock rules as we move through time and space. Thank you.
Yeah, we get all kinds of reports of different phenotypes, these supposed aliens. We've got a lady that called earlier tonight, talked about these white-skinned, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Nordic-looking beings. You've got the grays, you've got mantis-looking ones, you've got reptilians that are reported. How much of that is true, and how much is just like some science fiction blurred line? I don't know. But I'm open to it, and I think science will only prove these things to exist over time or disprove them. We just have to wait and see what the government's been holding on to as well.
Well, Darcy, I hope and pray to the almighty powers in heaven that we get some answers on the disclosure. The government's doing what they're doing. We'll do a future analysis if you'd be happy to come back here, and I appreciate your time. And then we're all going to go out and see Spielberg's movie on June 12th or thereabouts, right after, obviously not necessarily that day it starts. And we never even got to talk about these things, the sad stories about many of these scientists that are missing. Melissa Casillas said they found her body after a year. That is a really strange story. As administrative assistant, Los Alamos Labs, General McCaslin, and so many others. But Darcy, we'll have to check you out, of course, and I will, and hope everybody else will. How do you find Darcy Weir? Go to YouTube. Go to YouTube Movies, Secret Space, UFOs. He's done a heck of a job, ladies and gentlemen. I'm serious. I implore you to go out there to open our minds. That's what we try to do here on this radio show, that we learn something each week, not because of me, but because of the very special guests that we get, and we really do appreciate it. I don't want to apologize to Alina, who's been very patient. We ran out of time. And to anybody who tried to get through, we hope that you'll call again. Next week, on this particular Saturday into Sunday morning, we have a very special guest, Dr. Rainer Zittelmann. Will be calling us from Germany. His book, he's a great capitalist, but he's written a very interesting book that's really apropos, New Space Capitalism, as we continue to talk about the entrepreneurial path to the stars, his story about how Elon Musk will soon to be, if not already by the time we have him on, the first trillionaire as the big SpaceX IPO goes out there to the world. It's amazing, don't you think, Darcy, how far we've gone from the time of the first Sputnik back October 4th, 1957. I appreciate your time, and I want to thank you and hope you'll come back. You have a good morning.
Thank you
so much.
Had a great time. Take care, everybody.
And stay tuned to Talk Radio 77 WABC as we pass the microphone to Lionel for another side of midnight. And again, a big thank you and a celestial hug to our very special friends Manning as the helmsman, both Bill and Jackson, making sure that this sound that you hear sounds as good as you would expect. And a thank you to owner and operator John Katzimatidis from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, for giving me the privilege and honor of being behind this microphone. Clear skies, good health, and don't forget to observe the conjunction of both Jupiter and Venus in the northwest this week. We'll see you soon.
Almonte's Key Food, proudly serving communities throughout Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island for over 30 years. When you shop Key Food, you'll always find fresh products, great weekly specials, and exceptional personalized service. Visit at any of their Key Food stores at 8235 153rd Avenue, Lindenwood, New York, 935 Rosedale Road, Valley Stream, New York, and 6620 Avenue U, Brooklyn, New York.